So here we go. So what I've done is I've slightly updated the presentation. Okay, so let me just start by saying that I slightly updated the presentation for Learning Outcome 1, and this version is now, up on Moodle. The reason of doing this was the last assessment criteria 1.4. I put some comments in just to make sure that when we go into the assignment discussion, we are able to, cover the assessment criteria of, with the clarity that it is quite similar to 1.3, but in 1.4, we had to look at, if I just scroll down, we had to cover functions of how the systems are interconnected. And using one of the type of system, which means a pair, that means endocrine oblique, lymphatic, nervous oblique, endocrine or cardiovascular with respiratory or digestive with respiratory. We had to cover, the relationship between how the systems are connected to each other and how each system helps the other one connected in terms of interdependence and then allows the body to function. So this, slide, these two slides I've added just to give you an idea that when we discuss this assessment criteria, we are going to be looking at discussing two different types of systems. So you can't discuss muscular and maybe, endocrine system because they're not related. Or you can't discuss, for example, endocrine system with muscular system or, endocrine with respiratory system. So you have to look at combining or discussing at least a system wherein the functions of the organs within that system are interdependent on the system or the organs in the other system. So in the first learning outcome, if I just start from the beginning, we have discussed 7 different types of systems which are important, and then we've understood the level of organization in terms of how cells, tissues, organ systems, and finally an organism is formed. So that part allowed us to cover, most of the aspects of learning outcome 1, and including the 4 assessment criteria that we have gone through in terms of understanding the cell organization, the different levels of organization of cells in the organism, and then we have gone into understanding different types of systems which have assessment criteria like describing the major types of organ systems in the human body, and then we went into relationship between the organ and the organ system, and here we are talking about one organ system, but within that, how the organs function together to be able to, allow the system to perform its function. So here, the difference is that we are talking about, say, for example, if I talk about digestive system or respiratory system, digestive system has 10 different organs. So here, the assessment criteria is to talk about the different organs within the digestive system, like stomach, liver, spleen, pancreas, and then how they work together to allow the digestive system to absorb food that we eat into nutrients, broken down into nutrients broken down into molecules like carbohydrates, fats, proteins, and then they are absorbed in the body. And then the last part was keeping in mind the organ systems, but here talking about 2 organ systems and how they are interdependent on each other in terms of performing the function and help the overall human body or organism's body to function. So this is what we've covered so far, in learning outcome 1. And obviously there are a good amount of handouts to understand, the various organ systems and also to understand the assessment criteria. Now, in learning outcome 2, we are going to be discussing another important term, which is going to be called homeostasis. Now, this is, say, for example, in the first part, when we talked about, let's say, some of the organ systems and organs in particular, we basically went into and understood what is peristalsis, which is contraction of muscles to be able to, do some functions in the human body. So, for example, if I talk about, esophagus, what we did was in the esophagus, the contraction of the muscles allows the food to be pushed down from our food pipe into the stomach. So when we talk about peristalsis, we basically look at that as a process in which we are looking at a coordinated and a rhythmic contraction and relaxation of muscles in the human body. These muscles could be in the organs, these muscles could be in different types of organs, and they basically help in the digestion of food within the body. Now, that is a vital process because in some organ systems, it helps to propel matter forward. Or, for example, if I look at the excretory system, obviously the process of peristalsis helps the excretory system, the urethra, to be filled with excretions. And then at some stage, you get the urge to go and, you excrete that waste material from your body. So this happens through digestive system, gastrointestinal system, which helps in the digestion and absorption of nutrients within the body. It also, in literal effect, helps propel food or liquids through your systems in the human body. Now, when we look at these muscular contractions, there is a wave-like motion which happens, and that pushes any sort of solid or food from our body into our body, and then from different organs being treated by different, say, secretion of juices and stuff, and then it basically, gets absorbed and the waste part of it gets excreted. Now, peristalsis is a involuntary process. It is controlled by our nervous system. You don't do anything in it. So you can't think that, okay, I've eaten food, now my muscles need to start contracting, No, you don't pass any signals or any commands to your brain. Here, this is an involuntary action which is taken over by, which is basically performed by, I would not say taken over, it is basically performed by your nervous system. And the muscles which are involved in peristalsis typically are smooth muscles, which are different from voluntary muscles that we use to move our limbs or arms, or certain movements that we try and do when we bend our shoulders or move around. In those cases, those muscles are under the control of our nervous system, but also are in the control of our thoughts, because you are able to divert actions to those muscles to be able to do those things. So when we talk about this coordinated contractions and relaxations, this allows the process of, say, for example, the process of peristalsis to take place. Now, when we talk about homeostasis, what is homeostasis? So when we look at the indicative content in learning outcome 2, this is the ability of an organism or a organism system, which allows through this process to maintain internal stability and balance despite changes which are happening in the external environment. So, for example, if you forget to take your jacket and it's extremely windy outside and it's raining, your internal systems, the body temperature, the functioning of your digestion, the functioning of your cardiovascular system, respiratory system, all these things will work as usual, irrespective of what is happening in the external environment, to you, whether your body is facing, extreme winds, obviously rain and things like that, just as an example. So here, your body will be able to regulate your temperature, your internal environment to be able to function as close to normal as possible, despite what is happening in the external environment or the changes happening in the external environment. And this process through which the body maintains this function is termed as what is called homeostasis. Now, homeostasis is considered fundamental to the survival of organism, and for obviously organisms like human beings to live in an optimal, environment. Now, when we talk about homeostasis, I'll go into a bit of detail because this particular learning outcome will discuss homeostasis in detail, and then we'll relate it to our endocrine system, which is a system which basically controls all the, basic secretions of hormones, chemicals within our body. And then the idea would be to study some of the key glands which basically produce these hormones, secretions, which allow our body to remain normal even when the external conditions are, different. So when we talk about homeostasis, and when we look at learning outcome 2 focuses on understanding the homeostasis as a key process, which helps maintain the internal environment of the body. So we're going to focus first on homeostasis, and using the understanding on homeostasis, we are going to link it to the endocrine system and then cover some of the assessment criteria. So when we talk about homeostasis, what is it? It is the ability of the organism or the system to maintain a stable internal environment despite changes happening in the external environment. Now, this is vital and obviously very fundamental to a person, or when I say a person, I mean human being or an organism surviving, the harshness of, or for example, changes in the external environment. Give you a simple example. If you go into Siberia, or say, for example, extreme cold regions like Iceland, Greenland, Antarctica, and stuff like that, and you haven't taken appropriate winter clothing to, go and obviously be in that weather, your body will initially fight that, weather pattern. That means it'll try and keep your body warm, keep the vital organs of the body running. But as it is fighting something which is quite adverse and harsh environment, if you're not adequately equipped, things like you're not wearing inners or warmers, or for example, jackets and warm layers of clothing, then it will affect, the ability of the body to be able to deal with that harsh environment. So what tends to happen is sometimes in the shower, we put you switch on the shower and you immediately get cold water. Even in the summers here in the UK, if you switch on your shower and you have cold water going onto your body, for a moment you have this pause. Your breathing stops because you didn't expect that cold water to come through the shower. You were expecting hot water to come through. So this fight mechanism, which basically starts in your body, is because of the process of homeostasis. So sometimes we've also heard in the past, or when you have read books, or when you have seen news, fight and fear. There are two different mechanisms your body takes or gets into the mode when it's trying to either fight or, avoid any adverse climate or environments which are affecting the internal functioning of your body. And in those cases, different hormones from your body, like adrenaline, and there are others that we will go into, are getting released from the endocrine system. They will help regulate your body, maybe your temperature, the body's response, alertness, and lots of other biochemical reactions which typically tend to happen, and they help maintain the let's say a stable environment in your body. So going back to that example, if you didn't have thermals or maybe a number of layers of clothing, your body will try and fight that external harsh environment of extreme cold weather. But after a point in time, your skin slowly and gradually starts to become blue. That means the blood and the oxygen going into your blood is reducing. And that means slowly and gradually your body is getting into a state wherein it is trying to freeze, or, the functions of the body, organs and the organs within your body functions are being limited. And there will come a stage, at some stage, when you will essentially get frozen, and obviously it will lead to your body stop functioning, and then finally it leads to maybe the death. So in those cases, you would see that your body is trying to fight the external environment, but obviously this is a failing battle, because the body is not obviously you are facing harsh environments, you're not prepared, and obviously the body is trying its level best to maintain, but over a point in time it starts to give up, or in the sense it is overcome by the external environment. So this ability and relate this to the example of hot shower or shower. When you switch on, you get cold water for a couple of seconds and you immediately move the shower away from your body. But at some stage, when you realize it's lukewarm water which is hot enough to be able to put, you bring it back, and then your body basically gets accustomed. So this process through which the body tries to maintain the internal environment in spite of the factors in terms of how the external environment is and how it is affecting the functioning of your body and body organs is called the process of homeostasis. Now, what does it regulate? If I look at what does it regulate, it regulates these basic functions in your body. So things like your temperature, your blood pressure, your pH balance, your electrolytes in your body, potassium, the amount of sodium, which basically is responsible for pumping your heart, or, for the stability of your functioning of your organs, your blood sugar levels. These are basically things which homeostasis is generally related to. And this is what requires your body to basically have, a control on. So if, for example, what we see is that, if I put it this way, homeostasis as a function would try and adjust your internal conditions and the working of your organs and the body's internal environment. But if it fails, to maintain, then it will trigger some sort of a reaction. And this reaction that it triggers leads to either, say, for example, some sort of a reaction in the human body, which will allow it to either deviate or restore, the external, influence of what is happening on the body. So I'll give you an example here, just to understand homeostasis. Now, if I say, if your body's temperature rises, a normal human body temperature, what is the normal human body temperature? Anybody?
36, 37.
36.7 Celsius, yes. So that's your normal human body temperature. Now, if your human body temperature starts to rise, now there could be various factors. Think of how and why is your human body temperature rising. So yesterday it was 22 degrees. Today it is expected to be 22 degrees. But if you're sat out in the sun, in the park, and you're soaking the sun directly, your body is getting warm, and the temperature in terms of the body temperature is rising. So first you feel your skin starts to become hot. You get sensations of your skin burning or things like that. If you've been in the extreme heat, or this kind of a temperature for long hours, you would find that your skin starts to burn, or you start to see a bit of rashes, depending on, every individual body reacts differently. So in some cases, what you will see is your body temperature starts to rise. But at a certain level, your thermoreceptors in the skin start talking to your brain. And what they do is they start sending signals. So, for example, if your arms are exposed or your legs are exposed, your back is exposed to the direct sunlight and it is becoming warm, this is making the body extremely warm, then the thermoreceptors in your skin are going to send a signal to your brain. And within the brain, when I talk about, we'll go into the structure of endocrine system, but within the brain for now, there is an organ called hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is just placed over your pituitary. And this particular gland actually acts as a thermostat in your body. So what it will start to do is it will start to initiate what is called a cooling mechanism in your body. Now, the first thing that you will see is, if you've been out in the sun for long, and your skin's temperature or body temperature is rising because the skin is becoming hot, it will start to show signs wherein we start sweating first. That is the first thing which hypothalamus will do, which is your body's electrostat, is to basically start reducing the temperature at the surface level. How would that happen? Your body starts to sweat, and the sweating actually decreases the temperature on your skin because it makes the skin cool, and it leads to evaporation of, sweat happening from your skin. The other thing that you will see is you'll also start sweating. Some of us sweat on the forehead, some of us under the neck, on shoulders, underarms, things like that. And that is your body generally looking at getting into a mechanism wherein it is trying to cool it down. And this is basically by involving hypothalamus, which is your thermostat in a way of the body. And this then produces a hormone and releases signals to say, okay, let's start kicking the cooling mechanisms of the body into place, which is the sweat glands, which is dilating of your blood vessels, and this would allow the body temperature to go down to normal as far as possible. Now, if you continue sitting in the sun, at some stage, you will also have an urge to drink water or drink something, have something cold, like an ice cream, or, you might want to have a cold, drink or something like that. And this is, again, hypothalamus, which is the gland in your body acting as a thermostat, telling or sending signals to your brains that, okay, I'm trying my level best through sweating, dilating of blood vessels, and trying to bring the body temperature down, but it is not helping. So there's another signal which goes out and says there's an urge for you to now have water, because when you sweat, you become thirsty. So obviously you need more water. And this particular process that you see, wherein the body is trying to cool it down or bring the temperature down to 36.7, and you're enjoying the sun, what is involved in this process is nothing but homeostasis. That means the internal part of your internal environment of your body, the organs and the organ systems, and the hormonal system is basically looking at restoring the internal functionings of your body, irrespective of what the external environment and the changes in the external environment are pushing it to do. But it is using its own mechanisms to basically reduce the temperature of the body. And this process, wherein the organisms or the organ systems of a human body try to restore the internal proper functioning of its cells, organs, and tissues through this process of, fighting the external changes, or maybe making changes to by releasing secretions, hormones into your human body, is trying to maintain the stable internal environment. And this process allows us to survive. This process allows us to have an overall well-being. And this process is what is called homeostasis. Is that okay? Now, I've given a bit of a diagram here, which basically shows this bit wherein we talk about another example in which if you eat too much sweet, and in order to counter the sugar, which is getting, absorbed or basically absorbed in your blood vessels, there will be at some stage a stimulus which will be passed through the endocrine system. And this process of homeostasis, which is absorbing sugar into your body, will reach its peak level. And beyond that particular level, it will ask the organs like pancreas, liver, to start releasing what is called glucagon and insulin. And they will try and prevent the excessive buildup of sugar in your human body. So if you have excessive sugar in your body, if you take lots of sugar, like for example, you drink a lot of fizzy drinks, at some stage, your blood sugar in your body will increase. And what will happen is your pancreas as an organ in the digestive system will release a hormone called insulin. And that would basically regulate your blood sugar to bring it down to the usual levels. Now, if your blood sugar is low, then obviously it releases a hormone called glucagon. And this basically would then, be looking at raising the blood glucose or blood sugar level, because your body needs energy, and energy is produced by burning sugars in the body. So it'll lead to dissolution of fat, and from the fat or carbohydrates that you're eating, it'll lead to the release of sugars. These sugars will be, amalgamated with the hormone called glucagon, which will increase the blood sugar in your body, and that would allow you to be, getting the relevant amount of energy when you're doing certain tasks. Now, sometimes you become lethargic, you feel lazy, is because your blood sugar levels can also become low. So in those cases, the hormone released from pancreas tends to be glucagon, and that tends to increase the blood sugar levels. But if your blood sugar level is too high, then your body releases, what is called insulin. And this basically looks at reducing the blood glucose level or blood sugar level in your body. And this process is also an example of homeostasis. So when I talk about body temperature, regulation of body temperature, or when we look at your organs reducing or increasing the sugar and intake of sugar, and in order to regulate that within the human body, this process would also be termed as a process which is homeostasis. And this is what I've explained. So for example, when you look at the process of insulin and glucagon, which are basically hormones which control the metabolism of your body and then regulate the sugar levels in your body, they have involvement of 4 different organs: liver, pancreas, kidneys, and brain. Now, when we talk about hypothalamus tends to be a combination of This is the organ, part of your brain, which basically has autonomous nervous system and the endocrine system coming together, wherein all the nerve endings and everything come together, and they are then used to process or send signals across to various, parts of the body. Now, here, the liver is responsible for metabolizing any toxic substance, and that, if it feels that the blood sugar levels are high or blood sugar levels are low, it signals a response to pancreas, which basically looks at maintaining your carbohydrate metabolism. And then when carbohydrates are broken down, they are broken down into lipids and, fats and obviously, sugars. This would then be triggering a response to your kidneys, which will be responsible for basically looking at maintaining or regulating what is called basically your water levels in your body. And the reabsorption of, substances in your blood is essentially controlled by the electrolytic process, wherein the salts in your body, potassium, sodium, and they define what is the pH level of your body. So the body tends to be, anybody, does it know what is the pH level of the human body? Is it neutral? Is it negative? Is it positive? Or, do you know what is the pH level? So when we talk about the pH level, general range of the human body's pH level ranges from 7.35 to 7.45. And the range is slightly alkaline. So we are alkaline to basic. We are not acidic, in the sense that when you have, say, for example, let's say, we see this. How many of you have seen the advert of Gaviscon on your tellies? Have you seen the adverts of Gaviscon tablet or the Gaviscon? Yeah.
Yes.
Why do we see that advert, Gaviscon? So Gaviscon, or, basically when you have acidity in your body, that means there's a buildup of too much secretions and the body is having an acidic pH. That means you have a bit of a recluse, you have an urge, or the food, you try and throw up the food back, and you feel that, you have a heartburn and you feel uncomfortable. Now, this bit is regulated by taking a tablet, Gaviscon. So what it does in some cases is, when we look at the pH of blood, the pH of blood ranges between 7.35 to 7.45. So it is basically alkaline to slightly, basic. We are in the neutral zone. When I look at the, pH level of different organs, we can have different pH level for different organs. So when I look at stomach, the pH level of the stomach normally ranges from 1.5 to 3.5, and this is normally acidic, because the gastric juices in the stomach which are released, they basically help in the absorption and breaking down of nutrients into basic molecules for absorption into blood. So stomach's level of acidity, pH, is acidic. When I look at urine, the pH level of urine, sometimes when we are asked to provide urine samples because they want to check for infections or, excretions which are coming in the urine, do you have blood coming in the urine, urea, the amount of uric acid, which your kidney. So this urine test is normally done for kidneys and, liver. So when we see the pH of urine varies between 4.5 to 8, but the average is about 6. And then we look at the pH level of our saliva, the tongue, which has saliva, and we see the pH level of saliva being between 6.2 to 7.6. Now, it can vary. Sometimes if I have too much, if I've had an ice cream, the pH level might change because I have the remnants of the taste of ice cream that I've had, or a spicy food that I've had, it still is in my mouth. But the saliva pH can vary. But when I talk about the skin, the pH level of the skin varies between 4.5 to 6.5. So generally, the lower the range, we find that is that level of pH tends to be acidic. But if it's over a range of 6 or 6 and above, then it generally tends to be alkaline. That means it is opposite of acidic. Now, the skin's pH level generally tends to be slightly acidic, is because this is an external part of our body, and what we don't want the external part of the body is to pick up any infections. For example, fungal growth, for example, microorganisms growing on our skin. So that is why the skin's pH level tends to be acidic, because it helps in maintaining a protective barrier. And this prevents the growth of any harmful microorganisms on our skin in particular. But sometimes we still get, the athlete foot, wherein if you sweat a lot or you train a lot, normally the reason why it is called the athlete foot is because because of the skin becoming soft and vulnerable. At some stage, there's a fungal growth which starts to happen, and that leads to what is called, microorganisms growing on your feet. And that would be, because the acidic level tends to become alkaline and not acidic. So here, it is important to understand that every part of the organ which is involved in the endocrine system will have some sort of a regulatory mechanism which will trigger some responses. And these triggering of responses are going to be maintained by hypothalamus. And then they would help in the regulation of what has increased or what has decreased in your body. For example, another part of it that we look at is when we look at the women reproductive cycle, the level of estrogen typically tends to be the highest when you're ovulating. And this is again controlled by, the process of, hypothalamus, because the body senses the cycle and then starts to increase the secretion of that hormone in the body. When we look at males, it is testosterone which gets released. So in certain places, in certain situations, you also see adrenaline response, as we also call it, the fight and fear response. The body releases what is called the adrenaline hormone. So when you're excited, when you're enthusiastic, when you're daring to do something, or if, for example, if you're jumping off a cliff or you're doing paragliding, your body is fighting that response in terms of whether you're experiencing fear, nervousness, stress, or excitement. And the body then releases the adrenaline hormone, and that helps the body's internal environment to stabilize to the situation that you're doing. And the absorption of these, hormones, chemicals into your body for the process of maintaining the functioning of your internal environment generally tends to be homeostasis. So we can take up a lot of different examples to understand how the process of homeostasis essentially works within a human body. And I've taken two examples, one predominantly of, your blood sugar levels, and the other being your body temperature. And this can be used to understand, the process of homeostasis in detail. Now, what I've also done is I've gone into a lot of details in terms of how homeostasis essentially as a process works. Now, the internal part of your environment is also called intrinsic, and the external part can also be called external environment to your body, which is beyond your control. And these are environmental factors, and they are called extrinsic. So intrinsic means internal, extrinsic outside the body. And these mechanisms, depending on what factors are affecting your body. Now, one part in this that we have done discussion for now, homeostasis, we've talked about external, which is the body temperature, because if you're sitting in the sun and then increase of your blood glucose level or blood sugar levels, internal. Now, sometimes your internal body, there could be factors which could be affecting your internal body environment or functioning of the body, and these factors are going to be within your control. And that means if I exercise quite heavily or quite rigorously, my heart starts to beat faster, my blood flow in the veins and arteries increases, and obviously my body is burning energy and I'm sweating. Now, these factors are factors which are internal to our one particular organism or the human body. But there are factors which can affect you from outside. So when we look at homeostasis, it can be affected by internal and external factors. Internal factors would be within your control. External factors, in some cases, cannot be, would not be in your control directly. So when we talk about these factors which can affect the functioning of the human body, the body uses what is called peripheral chemoreceptors. or these chemoreceptors actually determine the change in the pH level of your blood, and they can trigger the response which is generally happening as far as the bits are concerned. So what we want to be able to do is, when we understand the process of homeostasis, we want to be able to differentiate that what could be factors affecting the body internally and what could be factors affecting the body externally. And these factors can be dependent on how the external and for example, the process of homeostasis can kick into and is continuously running, say, for example, in the human body, because it maintains the fundamental survival of the human body. And these factors, whether it increases the, let's say, the process of homeostasis, or it, say, for example, works in the usual way, can be dependent on how the body is being affected. And this effect, which the body senses, or changes that it detects and affects, and how this particular whole process starts, would be generally done through the detection and use of what is called our peripheral chemoreceptors. And they would receive the information. They are basically sensory mechanisms in our body which will receive stimulus, and this stimulus which is being received would then be preparing, maybe creating a particular bit of reaction in the human body, which is increasing, for example, the pH level of the blood, increasing the activity in our brain, increasing, for example, we looking at sweating, or increasing or making us more thirsty, or basically, increasing the pressure in terms of beating of our heart. And all these, or making us lazy, for example, or making us lethargic, or making us more active, they would essentially be the way through which we will differentiate how these factors affect the functioning of our human body. And internal factors would be within our control, external factors would be outside our control. And these factors would be sensed by the peripheral chemoreceptors, and they would then necessarily start the process of homeostasis within the body. Now, if you are drinking less water, an example here would be, if you are consistently drinking less water, maybe not today, but maybe for a day, 2 days, 3 days, then what will happen is your body will start getting some sort of reaction internally, which will say that the external water consumption into the body is less. The kidneys will start to, go into a bit of a, let's say, overdrive, and they will start retaining water so that they are able to maintain blood pressure. Now, when at a certain stage you have low amounts of water in your body, your blood pressure would start to drop. And what will happen is, how would you telltale the signs? You have a bit of a headache, you feel a bit of laziness, you feel a bit dizzy. And these are going to be the signs that we detect as outside people, that yes, maybe there is something wrong with the person, or maybe, but what your body is telling you internally is that because your intake of water is less, you're maybe going to the loo, or your process of urinating would decrease. The color of your urine would change to maybe yellow or dark yellow, and those are going to be telltale signs of that your consumption of water is low. And then the internal signs that the body is trying to give you is you being more lazy, your blood sugar levels being low, you feeling laziness and sleepiness, and that would tell you that, okay, and the headache, and they would tell you that, okay, there's something wrong. And first thing they do is they give you water, or when we look at externally people trying to help us, they will say, okay, how much water have you been drinking? Do you drink plenty of fluids? So they would advise start drinking plenty of fluids, and that would help restore the process of the body functioning normally. So this feedback, which continuously tends to happen internally within the body, is controlled through the hypothalamus, which is the part of the brain which essentially looks at working and controlling your autonomous central nervous system, and the endocrine system, which release the hormones within your body or the chemicals within your body. And depending on whether the body is giving positive feedback or negative feedback, your body is trying to adjust to this process of starting or, going into an overdrive for the purposes of maintaining the normal functioning in your body. Now, another example that you normally look at in terms of how your body gets triggered. A lot of us have had injuries over the years, isn't it? While maybe cooking something in the kitchen, you cut your finger, or you get a cut on your finger, and you basically start to see that blood starts to bleed. Now, can you think of where and how this process would, be related to your body starting a mechanism wherein it will start to basically, work towards restoring, the flow of blood, or closing that particular, flow of blood which is happened because of the cut, which accidentally has happened when you are chopping onions or, for example, vegetables. So this particular bit, which we see that the body tries to give a feedback through the hypothalamus and the central nervous system and the endocrine system to say there's a cut which has happened on the skin. How has it happened? The body has not done it. It's an external factor wherein you're chopping onions or chopping vegetables. That cut has got, the knife has created that cut. It's an external factor. Now your body will start a mechanism to stop the clot, blood flowing out. So what it will do is basically start the process of what is called, blood clotting. So when we talk about blood clotting, it will mean that this is a biological process in which your blood will coagulate. That means when you press your finger hard, or when you press your thumb next to your finger where the cut has happened, it is a process which is going to start, which means that the blood at that level wherein there's a cut which has happened on the skin, the blood will start to coagulate. And this coagulation of blood would mean that it will start to reduce the bleeding which is happening when you have got injured because of the cut that has happened on your finger. Now, this happens because, why does it happen? Because your skin has a lot of blood vessels, right? So anywhere where your knife strikes, it creates an injury to that blood vessel. The blood vessel gets damaged. And that injury or the scratch from the knife on your blood vessel, on your skin, we see essentially, actually is damaging the blood vessel internally, and the blood pressure basically, breaks. And because of the breaking in of the blood vessel underneath your skin, actually starts to lead to the blood flowing out, which is where you see the blood, when you have a cut, the blood starts flowing. You see a droplet and then it starts to trickle out. So that means the blood vessels underneath your skin are like pipes, and they are transporting blood to, various parts of the body. But when they get damaged, what you would generally see is the blood flowing out. Now, how would the blood flowing out stop? This would stop by the process of what is called blood coagulation. That means it will start to, thicken, and it will start to prevent bleeding from the blood vessel where the blood vessel has taken a cut. So when we in general talk about, coagulation as a process, so when we say coagulation as a process, the chemical that is released in the body tends to be, forming a mass or a clot around the blood vessel to seal the flow of blood. So what it is trying to do is essentially do a solidification by using a liquid substance in your blood, and that would make the blood thicker, and that would not allow it to ooze out of the blood vessel which has got damaged. So here, when we talk about the process of coagulation, it is basically solidification or thickening of, the cells which are, looking at, preventing the flow of blood from that damaged blood vessel. Now, there are different organs which are obviously in different hormones, which are involved in terms of, curing that flow of blood or, curing that blood vessel. So when we look at this being damaged, there are proteins in your blood which are called zymogen, and these blood proteins essentially start looking at clotting or coagulating the blood. Activation of zymogen and thrombin within your blood actually leads to the creation of the stopping of blood flow from that cut. And this is what is explained in this particular slide, which basically says that the zymogen and the thrombin essentially start to create a bit of a network. And that network, basically a meshwork or a network, as you call it, starts to create like a net. And that net starts to, heal the blood vessel and stops the flow of blood. And this, at some stage, because it creates a mesh, so the blood which is hitting the mesh is actually coagulating, and that condensing there, when you hold the finger and you try and block it, essentially helps the blood clot or condenses the blood cells on that location to stop the flow of blood. And this is again the process of homeostasis, because your body is trying to fight, and in this case what is happening is the release of the blood from your blood vessel creates a reaction internally which provides a positive feedback to your hypothalamus. Hypothalamus then releases a certain hormone, which is zymogen, and thrombin as a protein, which basically goes to the location to stop the flow of blood, and obviously then helps the blood coagulate in that location. And as a result, the flow of blood actually stops. Obviously, you do a bit of bandaging and, you apply a bit of cream and things like that. That helps in the coagulation of blood or stopping. But your body is naturally trying to do it through this process. And this, in some cases, tends to be a positive feedback going from from where the cut has happened to your hypothalamus. And that allows this whole process to actually work. So, in general, what we need to be able to understand in the first part of the context is to understand how the process of homeostasis actually works. Now, let's relate it to the endocrine system. Now, endocrine system is a complex set of organs and glands which basically help release chemicals or hormones, as we say, in the body. And these hormones help coordinate, regulate different types of activities which the other organ systems do in our human body. So, for example, they'll be regulating metabolism, they'll be regulating energy levels, reproductive activity, growth of our body, in terms of, say, for example, height, weight, mass. We look at, the responses that the body actually sometimes gives, which is fright, fear, stress, or the changes in your mood and development to responses is all basically controlled by the, on these particular organ systems in the body through the endocrine system. Now, we watched the video of the endocrine system earlier, and I would kind of play this up again simply because this is going to be relevant for us to understand how the process of hormone and hormone regulation tends to happen through the endocrine system in our body. So let me play that video.
The endocrine system is one of the two systems that are responsible for communication and integration between various body tissues, the other being the nervous system. Endocrine communication is achieved by means of chemical messengers called hormones. Hormones are produced in endocrine glands and secreted into the bloodstream to reach body tissues. A hormone can travel wherever the blood goes, but it can only affect cells that have receptors for it. These are called target cells. There are two major types of hormones: steroid hormones derived from cholesterol and are lipid soluble, and non-steroid hormones derived from peptides or amino acids and are water soluble. Lipid soluble steroid hormones can cross the cell membrane to bind to their receptors inside the cells, either in the cytoplasm or nucleus. Steroid hormone receptors are typically transcription factors. Upon forming, the hormone receptor complex binds to specific DNA sequences to regulate gene expression, and thus mediating cellular response. On the other hand, water-soluble non-steroid hormones are unable to cross the lipid membrane and therefore must bind to receptors located on the surface of the cell. The binding triggers a cascade of events that leads to production of CAMP, a second messenger that is responsible for cellular response to hormone. It does so by changing enzyme activity or ion channel permeability. Major endocrine glands include the hypothalamus, pituitary gland, pineal gland, thyroid and parathyroid glands, thymus, adrenal gland, islets of the pancreas, and testes in men or ovaries in women. The endocrine system also includes hormone-secreting cells from other organs, such as kidneys and intestines. Except for the hypothalamus and the pituitary, different endocrine glands are involved in different, more or less independent processes. For example, the pancreas produces insulin and glucagon that keep blood sugar levels in check. The parathyroid glands produce hormones that regulate calcium and phosphorus. Thyroid hormones control metabolic rates, while the ovaries and testes are involved in reproductive functions. On the other hand, the hypothalamus and pituitary gland play a more central, integrative role. The hypothalamus is also part of the brain. It secretes several hormones called neurohormones, which control the production of other hormones by the pituitary. Thus, the hypothalamus links the nervous system to the endocrine system. The pituitary is known as the master gland because it controls the functions of many other endocrine glands. A major role of the endocrine system is to maintain the body's stable internal conditions, or homeostasis, such as blood sugar levels or serum calcium levels. To do this, it utilizes negative feedback mechanisms, which work very much like a thermostat. The heater is on when the temperature is low, off when it's high. For example, when blood glucose level is high, such as after a meal, glucose induces insulin release from the pancreas. Insulin helps body cells consume glucose, clearing it from the blood. Low blood glucose can no longer act on the pancreas, which now stops releasing insulin. Another example is the regulation of thyroid hormone levels, which are induced by a pituitary hormone called thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH. TSH, in turn, is under control of thyrotropin releasing hormone, TRH, from the hypothalamus. When thyroid hormone levels are too high, they suppress the secretion of TSH and TRH, consequently inhibiting their own production. Thank you for watching.
So as you can see, this basically explains the process of how endocrine system is, going to look at the positive and negative feedback and then uses homeostasis as a process to maintain blood glucose level, to look at, maintaining calcium levels in your body, regulating, obviously the video only explains part of it, but looking at regulating temperature and any other site of vital, functions which are required to be performed in the human body as and when you are, facing situations or, participating in or, different activities. Now, with this understanding, what we want to be able to do is get into some of the, assessment criteria. There are only two in this particular learning outcome. One is it asks about explaining the process of or concept of homeostasis. So we've covered this in a bit of detail, but what you would need to do in the, assessment criteria is use any one of these as examples. One is the definition of the word homeostasis, which is the ability of the body to be able to maintain a stable internal environment despite changes happening in the external environment. So this is fundamental to the function of the human body or any living organism. That means this is the body's mechanisms to basically ensure that it is able to work and, able to work, in a way that it allows to control and maintain some of the internal functions of the organ and organ systems. Now, using one of the examples of either a body temperature, blood glucose level, blood pressure, or pH levels in your blood, skin, whatever, you have to take an example to be able to explain this particular, process. So in this case, what I would suggest is to refer to a handout which I put on Moodle, which is the homeostasis handout. And I have used and created some of these slides from that particular handout. and I've taken two examples. So any of these examples that I've taken can be actually used to explain this concept of homeostasis and how it applies to the human body and the functioning of the human body and the organ systems. In some cases, when we talk about blood glucose level, we talk about hypoglycemia or hyperglycemia. That means increase in blood sugar levels or decrease in blood sugar levels. And this can lead to what is called type 2 diabetes, which means you would need insulin or some sort of a tablet to be able to regulate your sugar and intake of sugar in the body. And this would be external help when you become diabetic. So in those cases, you are prescribed a medicine or medication which will help you regulate your blood sugar levels, sugar or glucose levels in the blood. And this requires external help. So the process of homeostasis would be, important because it will help in the regular and proper functioning of your organs. If your blood sugar levels increases, there are lots of negative effects of increase of blood sugar levels, of your body. So for example, if I say, what are the effects? What are the effects of increased blood sugar levels in your body? Anybody, any ideas? What happens if your blood sugar levels increase?
One might fall down.
Yes. So what happens if your blood sugar levels increase in your body? What could be the effects that you normally see if blood sugar levels increase in your body? That means you are, sometimes what happens is we have a lot of sweet, you have a lot of candies and, sweet drinks and things like that. But that is an occasional way that you would typically, have maybe sugars or increased, intake of food, which will be increasing sugars in your body. But over a point in time, if this persistent change, is not regulated, that means you are not reducing the intake of sugar in your body or the amounts of sugar that you take into your body, that can lead to long-term damage in your body organs. These long-term damage in your body organs tend to be damage to, say, your muscles in terms of blood vessels in particular. So macro and microvascular blood vessels, which can also then lead to frequent urination, increased thirst. It'll lead to, you be feeling fatigued or, lazy. You would, because you're wanting and craving, your body's started to become, adjusting to increased levels of sugar. It'll have cravings for you to increase eating or intake of your food. In some cases, when it starts affecting your body and you are diagnosed with diabetes, what tends to happen is it leads to weight loss, loss of your hair. It can lead and, obviously have symptoms like, blurring your vision. It can lead to the reduction of, slow healing of wounds in your body. And then in general, it can basically increase the risk of infections, which your body can pick up simply because, your body is not able to maintain the sugar levels. And this particular process, when your body sugar levels become too high and remain high persistently, is called hyperglycemia. And these are the negative effects that the body is trying to fight in order to maintain the balance of blood sugar levels in the body. And this is done through the process of homeostasis. But if your body becomes, if you're diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, then what tends to happen is that your body becomes your blood sugar levels typically tend to be, generally high, which are hypoglycemic. And then in those cases, you need external medication to be able to control the blood sugars in your body. And that condition is called diabetes or type 2 diabetes. So in such cases, when your body is trying to regulate the blood glucose level or blood sugar levels in your body, the process of homeostasis requires external help, which is in the form of medication that you have. And that medication that you have, is basically to reduce the amount of sugar in your body, which basically gets expelled out through urine or urination as a process, is done through the process of injecting insulin in your body to help maintain the sugar level, overall sugar level, so that all the organ systems are functioning properly. So you would need to take up an example to be able to explain the process of homeostasis, the positive and the negative effect, and the positive and negative triggers, and then how does the body control, the blood glucose level, the calcium level, the pH of the body or the blood, and blood pressure. And some of these examples will then be used to explain the process of how the body tends to maintain and run the process of homeostasis. The second assessment criteria is relating the process of homeostasis to the functioning of the endocrine system. So here is where we watch that video wherein it talks about the different types of organs which are there in the endocrine system. And when we talk about the organs which make up, the endocrine system, we look at talking about the organs which basically include, pituitary, hypothalamus, pineal gland, which was shown in the video. We look at thyroid gland, parathyroid gland, thymus, which is somewhere in the just above where your windpipe is in your neck, the adrenal glands, and the pancreas. And obviously, the idea here would be to explain how the endocrine system, essentially, what it is composed of, and how is it suited to, basically, run the process of homeostasis. Where does it help in the running of the process of homeostasis? So homeostasis is a process which is controlled by endocrine gland because it secretes what are called hormones. And as you would have seen in the video, it explains that, various hormones from different types of the, endocrine system glands or organs which consist of, which make up the endocrine system. Different organs actually release different types of hormones in our bloodstream, and they target different types of and help regulate different types of mechanisms in our body in terms of, normal functioning. So these are nothing but chemicals which are released, and they would either help in, locating, say, for example, a problem within the body. And if we find the blood glucose level to be high, then you would see glucagon or insulin low or high, depending on that. Your insulin will be released or glucagon will be released. If your temperature is high, you normally see zymogen or, thrombin. If there's a cut in the body, you will see zymogen and thrombin being released. If you see your skin temperature becoming high, then certain types of reactions would start in your body, which is the cooling mechanism to, look at activating your sweating glands. And that would lead you to basically start sweating. So those are the bits that you would need to look at explaining in terms of the coverage of this assessment criteria. That means you're looking at talking about the various organs of the endocrine system. What kind of, hormones do they release? Maybe do a small table. And at the end of the table, explain the function of one of the endocrine organs, what kind of hormone it releases, and how does it help us, in the process of homeostasis. So, for example, if I look at adrenaline, if I look at talking about, a situation wherein you're going on an adventure sport and you're excited, and obviously your body is releasing a lot of adrenaline because it is helping you cope with the response of fear and flight, enthusiasm, excitement, stress, nervousness. And that is where the chemical hormone adrenaline is being released to help, your body cope with the uncertainty, the stress, or the nervousness, or the excitement that you're feeling in your body. And that is what the process of, endocrine system is doing by releasing that chemical. But the homeostasis of the process is working because that hormone triggers the response in your body, and then it prepares your body accordingly to be able to deal with that situation. So here, the explanation of the endocrine system in terms of how is it best suited by releasing these chemical messengers or hormones into your body, which through the process of homeostasis help your body react or, say, for example, react to that condition, or basically look at maintaining a response to that condition that you're facing, is to be explained to cover this assessment criteria. So with this, it helps us to come to an end of learning outcome 2 in terms of our discussion. Any questions on today's session? Any doubts, any discussions, or any questions that you have to what we've discussed today? So one of the things which I would point you towards to go ahead and read, in the learning outcome 2 would be to read up on the handout of homeostasis, which will help you crystallize some of the parts of the discussion that we've done today in terms of, understanding this process with a lot of different examples that I've taken, and that would be quite useful for you to cover some of the assessment criteria. This particular handout, of homeostasis overview is the handout that I'm talking about, which basically covers this process in a great amount of detail with some examples from how you would want to explain relating to different organ systems. So homeostasis to the point of view of nervous system, endocrine system, integratory system, skeleton system, lymphatic, all the various systems which are there in the body. And then obviously it explains them with an example to relate them to certain factors like high glucose or blood sugar levels, water balance, pH level, and your body temperature, sodium, potassium, balance in your, which is called the electrolysis. Sometimes when we give bloods, one of the reasons of taking bloods is to test your electrolytes in your blood, which is the sodium potassium balance, which helps your body function normally, heart pump, and normally calcium phosphate balance. So this has been explained in a bit of detail. And you would be able to use one of the examples. So some of the things which I was talking about, the pH level of your blood, the skin, is basically all from this particular handout. And this is a must read to understand the learning outcome 2. And this will be a 15-20 minute read, but it will give you a detailed understanding of what we have covered today in our learning outcome. Is that okay?
Yes.
Good stuff. So if what we are going to do next week when we meet up at 9 a.m. on Saturday would be to discuss the assignment brief for this particular unit. And what I will also do during the course of this week is upload a sample assignment, which will allow you to see how the assignment has to be done, because this is a graded unit. And the idea would be to try and achieve the highest possible grade that you would want to on a unit like this, because this is one of the core units in your course. So do a bit of reading up on the different handouts of the, various organ systems, which is in the learning outcome 1, as I mentioned earlier, and then do a detailed reading of the homeostasis handout. And that would help you cover this unit comprehensively as far as, the unit and the indicative content and the learning outcomes are concerned. So I'm going to end the session here, and I will catch up with you next week. And next week, I'm going to try and also drop a Friday for some of you to be able to come up to the office to be able to go through some of the bits of instruments and other things that we have done. We have got, so they would be a bit of hands-on experience on using, like an octoscope or a stethoscope or a microscope, or a blood pressure monitor, a blood temperature, thermometer. Essentially, we have also ordered, when we have got all these now in the college, they're all available, blood testing machine. When we do the blood glucose test, you test your blood, and there are different slides, specifically, which I would want you to go through under the microscope, which are related to infectious diseases as a unit. And there are 120 of them that we'll be able to look through under the microscope. So it'll be a bit of a case of setting up we will set up a demonstration lab wherein you'll have different instruments available in the room. And the idea would be to go and use some of these instruments to familiarize yourself with the usage, obviously the type of instrument. And this would be useful for some of you to understand the brief history of medicine when we talk about the introduction of various types of instruments which have happened over the years in the last 100 years or so. And we've got about 9 or 10 of these instruments now, which you can look at. So this bit that I'm going to try and organize is like a bit of a practical 3-4 hour session in the college. And this is to take you through some of the bits that we are going to be using in the brief history of medicine, aspects of human physiology. You're looking at, the infectious diseases, and some of these you would be able to relate to that you've used and, seen and seen them under the microscope as well. And they would be quite useful. So we will put out a notification and obviously a consensus so that everybody is able to come in on a Friday, or most of you are able to at least attend on a Friday. If not this week, then it will be next week, but we'll try and give ample time so that everyone is able to come in and attend, and that will be useful for you going forward. So thank you so much for joining in today, and hopefully enjoy the rest of your day, and I will catch up with you in the subsequent days and weeks. Bye for now.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.